Tony.
No, that was my fault. Sorry, I'm very childish. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let's Thrown Out. Tonight you are joined by everyone's favourite curry kitten,
Hello.
everyone's beardy Stephen.
Hello.
More moustache than beard. I think you have greater moustache bar.
Going for the wingspan.
Yep. My darling wife.
Bonjour.
You can change it back to Tony if you want.
No, I'm happy with wife.
We're waiting for Frank, and I'm bright till I fly. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Hello.
Thanks for everyone who sat round and waited for us guys to start. We still wait for Frank. I don't. Does anyone know why Frank's held up a bit?
I just said he's running
So
late.
he's basically putting out fires.
Yeah, I was going to say it can't be London stuff anymore.
He says go, go, go.
It's got to be like cows crossing the road and sheep and things like that now. It can't be stabbings and things.
Got a sheep stuck on the roof.
Gunfire. Yeah.
It's none of that anymore.
Actual farmers with shotguns, I guess.
Yeah.
At a push.
Maybe.
Yeah, so you guys were talking about your quad wing design. Is that right, Steve?
Oh man, my plan for a bloody stupid design, and ultimately the vehicle for many wing flyers to point at me and say I told you so. I've got a bunch of foam gliders here, and I've got
literally
bits
no
of quad
expense
frame and bits of motor. I've got some 2204s, and I was just saying, like, I probably want something that swings. I was looking at 3-inch, and then I thought maybe swinging a bigger prop is good, because when you're on a plane and you've got a quad that's kind of illustrative purpose, or a quad like that on the front, what I'm going to need to do is to have lots of yaw inertia, because my yaw is going to become my roll. And I was just umming and ahhing about that, basically.
So you're putting a quad on the nose?
Yeah, or I'll chop the nose off and put the quad a bit further back so it doesn't completely screw the CG.
This is interesting because this seems to have deviated slightly from last week when I thought you were talking about putting a quad this way on. Because you said, oh, you can take off anyway, you can just hover. But if you put it at the front,
podcast. This way is
horizontal. I thought mounting horizontally.
Yeah.
But
so I was thinking what I actually wanted was to mount it kind of on the wing, and then to have the wing have some little legs that come out, so the quad still sits upright, and then I just take off like that. Sorry, I should take this thing out of the bag. But
do you think a 3-inch is going to...
No, I don't really think the 3-inch is going to do the job, but it's just what I've got. The other frame I've got is down in the box, and I can't be buggered to go and root around.
I must apologise to audio listeners. It sounds like you're in the cinema and the person in front of you
Sorry,
is the biggest bag of sweets ever.
Eating popcorn very rudely. So for audio listeners, I'm showing the wing out of a foam glider with a quad frame on the top of it, and I was thinking if I can get it to sort of stand like this, I might be able to get 2 of the little tail finny bits, or just some 3D printed bits, and just put some legs on it, and then I can take off like, straight up, however I want, and then I can just punch it forward, and I'll get a nice bit of lift by virtue of the fact that there is a wing attached to the rear of my quad. If indeed the flight controller can deal with it, it'll be a testament to what they've managed in Beta Flight 4.3. Does it completely freak out, or does it go, yeah, all right, yeah, you tied a wing onto your quad, that's fine. We'll see.
Well, I think it's more viable now, because what you've basically done is replace one prop at the front with 4 and using differential thrust instead of your servos.
Yeah, I hated servos. That was the main thing.
I was wondering if you could just mount... Well, you can either tell it that the flight controller is mounted differently than it is, so it believes that way is level with the wing, or you could just mount the flight control on the wing and the motors of the quad just in front.
I was going to mount the flight controller on the frame so it kind of knew that it was facing forwards. It shouldn't be a problem. I mean, ultimately, I'm not going to fly stabilized. I'm going to fly acro. And all acro is just like, is it going where I'm pointing it? It's not going to try and self-level itself. So it should be all right, I think. Like, you can still just go, like, balls to the wall and fly, 90-degree forwards if you want to. with a flight controller, can't you? I mean,
Where are you going to mount your camera? In the middle?
Well, the camera's going to be at quite an extreme angle, obviously.
You're
No,
going to
just
need at least 90
basically,
degrees.
yeah. Well, at least 90, nearly 90 degrees. I do have a flight controller somewhere with a camera switcher, so that's not out of the question. They're not. I've used one on the tank before. The rover that I've got, it's got 2 cameras on. That's not terrible. I could just splash out for a Matec with a built-in camera switcher, or get a separate camera switcher. Just runs off a UART or off the LED pin. Either way, yeah. So
do they switch?
If you've got a nice big field of view, if I have a 1.6mm lens, that field of view is going to be like 160 degrees. Oh, it switches almost instantaneously, Tone. So long as you're not using one of the rapid fire field combining modes, you've got to put it on like legacy mode because it butchers the sync signal.
Right.
But yeah, I was really thinking just put the camera at sort of 60 degrees and have a really wide field of view, and then I'll be able to take off. And once I'm going, I'll probably see enough.
Have you considered, since it's now at the front of the wing, how you're going to land without wrecking stuff?
Same way I land a quad, so I'll probably wreck stuff.
Turn it off up here.
just
I mean, I've still got
about
stabilized mode. If I'm flying like that and I put it in stabilized mode, it's just going to go whoop, and it's going to have the wing on its arse, and I can probably just slowly park it there, can't I? So
it would probably fly down, won't it? It would probably land like that. If you just switch the motors off, you could probably glide for a bit.
if I completely disarm it, I could probably glide a bit. Yeah, that's true. But I was thinking more of a vertical takeoff and landing because that looks really messy and I'll probably get mud on this. I don't want to get mud on my wing, so I'll just sort of flip it into stabilized mode and just pop it down at my feet. Okay. So same way. That was the thing of taking off as well, just to sort of take off. Whoop. So put some little triangles or something on the end of the wing so it can stand up, which apparently are also something winglet, something stability. I don't know. It might just be bits of cardboard slotted into the wing. I don't know.
Well,
it's going to be a learning experience.
Look forward to this video
Yes.
and demonstration.
Did you ever do anything with do you remember the slow down air mode flaps? Did you do anything with those at any point?
The slow down air mode flaps?
No.
Yeah, it was a weird idea basically where, it gave you bullet time where flaps from underneath your quad would open out, giving you a greater surface area.
I vaguely remember someone doing stuff with those. It looked a bit faffy, I have to say.
You mean like an air brake?
Yeah, an air brake. No,
sounds like it. If you were really bombing it along on a quad and you put an air brake, unless it was a very solidly constructed air brake, you'd end up with just a kind of explosion, and then your quad would carry on.
Well, I can't remember. It was just like some quad had it where you could just, they kind of folded out and it would slowly. I'll be back. Sorry, I got to be ill. I'm sorry.
I vaguely remember it, but I can't remember exactly what it looked like.
Pavel did it, apparently, according to Caroline Tyler. I have to say I don't remember that particular experiment, but I'd be interested to see. I just thought it's an interesting phenomenon, and we'll see what happens. We will see. Yes. I've also been building some other bits and bobs, apart from procrastinating on the wing. I've got SharkBite up and running with its fancy, display port, all that canvas mode gubbins. So super shiny digital menus and things in this little guy, which is a 1304 based 3-inch. I thought, if there's a place where SharkBite's going to excel, it's on the super lights where you can't get regular digital systems. So I'll try it there. And it's really nice. I've got an EP2 in here, and they changed the LED for a bright green one, and it looks like a disco. It's quite fun. I jammed it right at the top of the canopy. Yeah, I'm going to fly that over the weekend and see how that goes.
Have you guys talked about our Nemesises yet? Well, DJI stuff.
In what way?
Well, they got a new drone, I think, coming out tomorrow.
I've seen bits appear on YouTube saying announcement coming, but they didn't seem to suggest what it was. Have you seen anything, Tony, about what was coming?
I think it's a new Mavic.
Because every time you think, oh, it's a new Mavic, it's a new Phantom, it's some sort of stupid
It's a
holder for your
gimbal.
phone. Yeah, it's a
Well,
gimbal.
apparently
Yeah, it's a fast charging battery, Matt.
The new Mavic, but it's got 2 cameras on the front or something. One for
Hmm.
stills and one for zoom, something like that. I haven't seen.
Oh.
I've just seen pictures. I haven't really looked into it at all.
I was dead
saw a
interested in
price.
Mads, Ian, the Welsh guy's coverage of the Action 2. Thought that was quite amusing. Like he couldn't
Yeah, what
use
do
it
you guys
indoors
think
for
of
more than
that?
5 minutes.
I saw Rotor Riot's video and it looked really good on there, but then
Yeah.
I've looked at other people's videos and it does look good, but apparently it cuts out if you run it at
Right.
4K 120
This is one of-
frames. It gets too hot and cuts out
This is one of those press announcements you can literally use to decide
3
like
minutes.
who's taking money from DJI and who isn't getting money from DJI, because some people say it's amazing, nothing wrong whatsoever, and other people are like, I can only record for 4.5 minutes and it switches off, and then I charge it and the charging heats it up, and then I can only record for 2 minutes. And other
seems to
people are like,
depend
no
where you
problem,
are.
no problem.
That's
I
based
think you're
where
probably-
you are in the world as well, isn't it?
Yeah, okay in the UK. I saw Bloods posted a video having a go at it, and I asked him, I said, did you have any overheating problems? And he said, no, it came down freezing because, yeah, look outside right now. It's pretty
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
So we're in a perfect environment to run it. But
So long as
people
you're
in
flying outdoors. If you're flying
an
indoors,
actual
you-
environment are screwed.
Yeah.
Isn't it geo-locked as well, though? There's a heat
Yeah.
sink thing where you can press a button. If you're in the States, you can make it run
yeah.
hotter, and it will apparently run for a longer time. But because we've got EU stuff over here, it's not allowed to get too
Because
hot
we've
to the
actually got
touch.
safety regulations, and it's not
Yeah.
just like sell something until it becomes unsafe and kill someone and then take it off the market, unlike America.
So it's blanked out in England or in
Yeah.
EU and stuff. The bit where you can.
It's the same as the FCC mode for the FPV system, right? It just geofenced it.
That's boring.
Yeah.
So what you should do if you want to get one is buy it from the US. Then it will...
Yeah.
Well, the instant you
Run
activate
properly.
it, and you have to activate it after a certain amount of time, it locks out that option. So you can use
So-
it for a short while, but then you're stuck.
And this is why I don't have DJI goggles.
And then
Yeah.
you've got to sign
Any
in
consumer piece of kit
I
which
know
is
where you
essentially like standalone but forces you into activation is like,
It's a bit dirty.
I don't like
Yeah.
it. I don't like it.
It's a bit dirty.
It's
I
wrong.
think after a couple of firmware updates, I mean the weight's really good and the size of it. It's not much actiony though, is it? It doesn't look very rugged.
No. I thought it
Given
sounded
there's
like
that
it's like-
massive and replaceable lens on the front, it's just saying "scratch me now."
It's got a beautiful looking image quality. I mean, Maz, he did criticize it, but his flight videos look amazing. And once you've got it on a quad, it's cool enough. It's okay. It's got plenty of air going over it. But you've got no removable memory and you've got no removable battery. So you've got a 20-minute runtime and a 22 gig usable capacity. And once either of those is done, you've got to recharge it and you can't use it, can't swap the battery out, keep flying. And you've got to drain the storage onto another device, and you can't use it while that's happening either. And apparently it takes 1 minute to move 1 minute of recording. So 20 minutes flying,
So that
20
means
minutes
you've got to
charging
take
and
a
moving.
laptop out of you, or go
Yeah.
and do your 20 minutes filling
Right.
up. And
Or you've got to
then
buy two of
upload
them
it.
effectively, because they run for 20 minutes at a time and they record 20 minutes. And so you come down with one, swap it over, it gets recharged and pull all the data off it, and you fly with your second one. So if you want to actually use it for serious business, you need at least two of them.
I do like the weight of it though. It looks, what is it, 56 grams or 53? or
Yeah,
something?
it's pretty light.
Yeah. Be good on a
And the
Wii
footage
or
looks
something.
beautiful. It's really nice.
It does look good, what I've seen of it. But yeah, I mean, who's going to run 4K 120 frames anyway all the time? You're not, are you?
No. Well,
Not if
Four-
you want
and the- and-
cinematic. I mean, cinematic in the cinema is 24 frames. Why would you
But-
run
but-
120 unless you want to slow some bits down?
little Smo 4K is like 30 grams, takes a micro SD. You can power it. I've got a balance connector there. Just power it off your LiPo. And that'll do 4K 60. Doesn't do 4K 120, but does 4K 60.
Yeah.
It's maybe not as nice. It's not quite as fancy, but it's pretty good. I'll stick with that for now.
20 minutes to get footage
Yeah.
off there. Oh,
Yeah.
That's
Fly
mad.
for 20 minutes, copy footage and charge for 20 minutes, fly for another 20
It's
minutes.
interesting to think who they're marketing that at, because if it's marketed as an action camera, looking like everybody, like if you're like a mountain biker or a skier or a scuba diver or whatever, you just take a GoPro along and you can do about an hour's recording and then it's full, swap the battery, swap the SD card, you carry on with.
What
You'd
you do
have
at
to
the
have
top of a mountain?
a little bank of those things, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Just to keep turning it on.
You're a snowboarder. You've got your stick and you've got your camera and you're going to take some amazing videos. You get to the top of a lift. Oh, it's full. Oh, what do? You have a laptop in your backpack? What's the situation look like?
I mean,
They haven't thought about this, have they?
Not really.
No.
4K on YouTube looks shit anyway, unless it's really slow and a sunny, hot day. Like my video of me travelling down the river with the dog on the kayak, 4K, glorious day, looked lovely because it was just all slow. You go fast on YouTube 4K, it's just choppy and shitty anyway, isn't it? So I don't know. I mean, 4K 120 slow down stuff.
Well, that's
will
just
look really good.
That's an infrastructure problem, right? It's waiting for people's internet connections and people's devices to catch up. It's actually pretty demanding to play like high bitrate 4K streams. You can really max out your connection.
It costs YouTube a lot of money to have these massive.
Well, I mean,
server
YouTube have got
rooms running.
advertising, so I'm sure they'll find a way if there was incentive for them to do it. I upsampled some stuff. I just doubled it, and I ended up with 5K videos for some of my stuff on YouTube because I was trying to get around the crappy quality by doubling the resolution, and some of it ended up at like 5K, and yeah, it gets really demanding to play it. I've got this PC with
Probably
like 24
demanding to
cores.
edit
I can
it.
just watch my CPUs get slammed.
I mean, me editing 4K 30 frame stuff, my PC's like doing 120. I thought, like trying to watch a bit of footage and edit it would be a nightmare.
And where's it going?
don't do
Right? A lot of
anything
the
in
audience is
4K.
on Instagram and stuff as well. So
Yeah,
4K just takes up too much disk space. It's like I've already got
it does.
4 discs sitting there just for 1080p for
yeah, I think
loads
Mads
of
was
stuff.
quoting
4K would
for
be
the 4K
insane.
60 850 meg a minute. So your 20 minutes of
stuff.
footage that's 16 gig right there.
Mm.
I've been thinking about chimney nuts.
Have you now? Tell us about
Yeah.
chimney nuts.
Chimney nuts. Well, I was just thinking you can slide a bit of plastic here and then screw into the bottom of it like that. M5, of course. Prop
This is a
size.
podcast, Jack. So explain what you're doing.
Explain
Yeah,
what a chimney
screw.
nut is for ignoramuses like me who are staring at that and wondering if it's a bit of stationery you found.
No, the chimney nut is like basically it's like a nut with a clip. That's a clip, and you can slide. I've slid a bit of paper in it, and you can then tighten it down on your prop, and then maybe you could DIY your own propellers. Google a chimney nut if you don't know what one is. There's an
Well, that's like
idea.
the Christmas special from the Victorian era, chimney nuts.
Yeah.
They're sooty, but they taste great.
I bet Dimnar knows about them.
Yeah, good old chimney nuts. That's what I was thinking. What is the most stupidest thing I can slot into a chimney nut and make my own props?
Well, I was gonna
I
think.
suppose you could get a little bit of perspex
Right,
and you could just bend it with hot air, right? You could
Yeah,
customize it.
exactly. Yeah. But equally, you could just do that with a bit of plastic and then just drill a 5mm hole in
This is what we need. Back to cottage industries, homemade artisanal quadcopters.
Yeah.
I feel it's derailed enough for us to say, should we go and get on with the actual subject of this podcast, which
Scheduled
was Stephen's
programming.
suggestion about Sims, because he
Right.
said, when you said it a few months ago, we were having lovely weather, and you said, oh, it's getting quite crap, we should talk about Sims at some point. We're like, no, it's really good. Last week, it's been bloody awful.
Well,
it's
as we've all lived in this
foggy.
country
This
for
week's been nice.
most of our lives, I think we realise it gets shitty and no one wants to stand outside, roughly from November until about April.
I find
So-
that even if you can stand going outside, doing this means after about 5 minutes you can't actually feel the
The
sticks
first
on
pack,
your thumbs
you're
anymore.
really nimble and agile. The third pack, you can barely move your fingers. Yeah, it's not good.
That's it.
Okay.
So what have you found out, Stephen, about Sims and the way they smell?
Well, I saw that it was the Steam Halloween sale, so I kind of went bananas and I bought a bunch of Sims. And I thought, well, how can I legitimize this reckless fiscal irresponsibility? I can do a Sim comparison. So what we have here is me being a grumpy git and playing Sims on my own and comparing them. I did a lot of testing on Linux because that's what I run, but I also booted into Windows to make sure that it was representative. And I found out a whole load of things. One, don't believe the hype. And two, like some of these are absolutely gargantuan. That I didn't realize how complex and how many maps were in some of these. I also learned a lot about how gamepads are mapped, so I'll touch on that. And let's just do a quick rundown of the ones I found. There's some that are very similarly named that start the lineup, and those are the Drone Champions League. You may have noticed this in yellow and black livery. Doesn't seem to actually be that huge of a contest, but they've got a game, and it is a real world contest. There's the Drone Champions League, and then there's Drone Racing League, which is people like Nurk and that flying in, and this is the one where they have tryouts every year, and you'll see Bardwell and others talking about it. And if you run the weekly tryouts, you can get into the actual real world thing. Then we've got Velocidrone, which I was pressured to include, despite the fact that it winds me up. Liftoff, Curry Kitten Sim, can't leave that one out. Sterling work. Uncrashed, FPV Freerider, which was dusted off and thrown into the running.
This many.
Yeah, and I was just going to do a quick rundown, and feel free to jump in. I've rated them on a bunch of criteria, and I've decided that useful criteria would be the selection of quads, the graphics, the controller support, obviously a big one for us, the tracks, the interface and menus, and then the community around it. And so I've kind of done a little comparison. I'll post the notes if anyone wants to see. I've also got the price of each. So starting off with this Drone Champions League, this was the most expensive, and I must have bought it on sale at some point because it's $24.99, and I'm pretty sure I didn't pay that much for it. It's Windows only, but I managed to kludge it into working under Linux as well as trying it on Windows. Refuses to go full screen even under Windows. Just a little bit odd there. I think it's designed for PS4. I don't have any consoles, but I gather that's where a number of the players are.
I was going to say there's a couple of these ones, and it's a little bit confusing because we got something league about 4 times, haven't we? Mm-hmm. But they did make, I think, an Xbox and PS4 version of one of these, but I've no idea how that plays because obviously using a PS4 controller is one of the worst things possible to do when trying to fly anything.
There are people talking about plugging OpenTX into a PlayStation with varying degrees of success. From what I can gather, the way you really want to do it is just go straight USB, not use one of these wireless adapters because they have very varying results, but straight in USB. And the one thing I should get off the bat right now, if you're finding that you can't see a throttle channel, it's because Windows, or whatever your OS is, has assumed you're using a gamepad. And Curry probably knows this, but gamepads have like triggers, analog triggers. So you don't go left X, left Y, right X, right Y. You go left X, left Y, left Z, right X, right Y, right Z. So where you think you should be seeing a throttle, usually like AETR should be on like channel 4. Well, channel 4, it assumes is going to be the trigger axis. And most of these don't have any use for a trigger, so they hide the trigger axis. So you want to like step over channels 3 and 6 and just map things to 1, 2, and then 4, 5. And then you should, bingo, get a mapping. If you haven't got someone who's actually worked, mirrors, someone who's actually worked and got their controller mapping working properly. A lot of these games just don't bother to do that. So you're going to need to jump around it and create a special model for the joystick, which isn't too much hardship. You just have an extra model that remaps, avoiding channels 3 and 6. You'll also find that when you want to map a button, a lot of them think things aren't buttons or switches until you get up above axis 10 or 11. And below that, it thinks, no, it must be an axis. It must be like a thumb hat or an extra, God knows what they put on, a fishing controller.
I can explain why that happens quite easily. In OpenTX, they designed the joystick map. So the first 16 channels are all axis, and anything above that is a button. It doesn't matter what it's assigned to. If you're on channel 17 and you put it on a stick, it's now a button and has a 0 or 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of OpenTX's fault, but it is very odd.
I was able to get buttons reading out on channels 14 and 15, so I don't know what was going on there. I don't have anything mapped over channel 16, but I managed to get buttons working, so yeah. Maybe we can put our heads together and post a profile on this, but yeah, that was present on a bunch of these. So anyway, DCL, very expensive. The quad selection, I've given that a 3 out of 10 on DCL because they have their big yellow and black quad, their small yellow and black quad, and a giant yellow and black quad. And then you're like, oh, but look, there's hundreds more. Well, the hundreds more are just skins. They don't behave any differently. So you've got an X class that isn't really designed for the tracks, a middling underpowered 7-inch, and then a typical kind of 5-inch race, which is, a bit more fun. And I flew most of them on the 5-inch race one, so 3 out of 10 for that. The graphics, I'm saying 9 out of 10 because it had beautiful, beautiful trails that you followed, and the maps were rendered in delicious detail. This is the only one where I noticed the scenery was actually one of the two where I noticed the scenery is actually dynamic and there's some movement and things there. That was nice. The controller support was 4 out of 10 because in the menus, at some point it would decide, because you're using a gamepad, all of the menu actions are no longer clickable with your mouse, and you have to use your shoulder buttons to move through the menus. And I never did figure out exactly which channels were supposed to be the shoulder buttons, so I was unable to use the menus for a lot of that unless I backed out of the menu and went in, and then it would randomly allow mouse clicking. And as soon as I maybe jiggled the stick on the joystick, it was convinced that I plugged in my gamepad, and it would remove the mouse clicking options and show me LT and RT prompts for things, which just stops me from being able to actually select a track. That was pretty rough. The tracks are just huge. This is the one with Prop Town in, and you'll probably see Prop Town in a lot of videos, and there's an oil bando that's quite nice as well. There's not many of them, but the tracks are really, really nice. Interface and menus, very hit and miss. Like I said, I'm saying 5 out of 10 for the interface and menus because you just can't click through them with OpenTX because it thinks that you need to use R1 and L1 and A and B buttons. Maybe we can figure out a profile for that, but it's going to rely on people memorizing things and using their trim switches as buttons. It's horrible. So overall, it looks great. There's a lot of hype on DCL, but I'd say actually that 25 quid price and the low number of quads make it not great. Then move on to DRL, which is kind of the polar. Sorry,
it's £8.24 at the moment. It's on
on sale. Yeah, that's when you want to buy it.
Well, there's a sale.
But DRL on the other hand.
Just to say as well, while Stephen's going through all this, if you've tried these and have an opinion, please write it in the comments, and we'll take that into account.
Throw it in there. More feedback is good. Yeah, so thank you, Jack. That's DCL, and the one I was gonna, it's lots of hype, but to be honest, the lack of quads and lack of tracks is a bit of a downer. Then if we go on to DRL, which I think is better, the price is £7.49 normally, and it's 50% off, so it's down to like £3.60 right now. And I think you can't. Oh no, the price is up again. You can't not buy this one if it's on sale. It's really good. If you want to have a go, the quality here, the number of quads, and the fact that they do tryouts each year, and you can just play everyone in the world, that makes it quite a compelling purchase. There's some beginner tracks, and then it escalates very quickly up to some insanely difficult professional tracks with tight cornering where you need to do inverted 0G moves to get through gates and stuff. I'd say the quad selection is 9 out of 10. I'm seeing everything from 533s, Switchback Pro, through to other popular race frames, freestyle frames. There's stuff up to the DRL4, which is a big 7-inch, all the way down to a whoop. Like you can fly a whoop on full throttle around the same tracks that you flew a 7-inch very cautiously around. It's quite funny.
What do they feel like now? Do they feel like you're flying a drone? Because some of them were just
I
like...
found it compelling. Like this,
Yeah.
I found Freerider, FPV Freerider, they haven't changed the physics on that, and that felt like absolute poop compared to this. This, I actually felt it was a very nice feeling game. And when I played most of it with that 533 Switchback Pro, and it felt really nice. I can't speak for the bigger DRL quads because I just don't fly that type of thing. But I fly light 5 inches, and it felt like a light 5-inch. I think I preferred the feel of DRL to pretty much everything here. It felt like they really put a lot of effort into it, and I can believe that because they've got professional race pilots playing it, and they'd call it out if there was something too wrong there. The graphics aren't quite as shiny as DCL, but they're still pretty hot. I'll give the graphics an 8 out of 10. It feels a little bit older. It's not quite as shiny as DCL or uncrashed here, but it performs well, and there's no glitching and slowdowns. What's really visible is the fact that they've had maps in there from 2016, 2017, all the way through to 21, and the older maps just don't look as good. They haven't gone back and remastered them, so they're still using kind of an older 3D feature set, not as great textures, not as great lighting. So there's quite a variety in you can see how it's progressed just by playing a few of them, but the new maps do look spectacular. I'm thinking of things like the bridge and campground maps. They were really good. Controller support, 7 out of 10. Same problem with channels. Calibration worked. It didn't think that I was using a gamepad through the menus, and I had no issues there. Tracks, 9 out of 10. There's just a huge, and I mean huge, number of tracks. Like, not quite as many as the user-submitted iterations for Velocidrone, but a really, really big number of tracks. Going through there's some United States Air Force maps which are quite nice, where you can fly through decommissioned aircraft, and you've got gates that are like the turbine housings of jets that you have to, make a beeline through. Really, really interesting setup on this one. The only problem with some of the maps are that they're so varied and odd. A lot of the times, a couple of aeroplane wings with light up posts on them are the gate, and it can be hard to tell what's a gate and what's just part of the scenery that you're flying around. But overall, the variety, I think, really made up for that. And when you're chasing towards a gate, it shows a fixed size sprite, and you don't know if you're getting closer or not to the gate because the sprite doesn't get bigger as you fly towards it. It just stays the same size, and then eventually, you hit it when you're not expecting to. The interface, 7 out of 10. Really simple, and I like the fact they put the camera angle like on the main menu, so you didn't have to go into sub menus. You just had the camera angle right there. It was nice and easy to tweak if you wanted to dial it in, because a lot of these, you're changing quads, flying different speed maps with tight cornering or big ovals, and you want to change the camera angle quite a bit. But I think the real winner on that was the community. Like 9 out of 10. You can play in tryouts every year, and those tryouts can take you into the real world competition. So that's the only one that offers that, as far as I know. Matchmaking was on by default, which I didn't really want when I was testing it out, but it was easy enough to turn off the notifications and just go into Mr. Boring's Forever Alone mode, which is what I did. The next one everyone loves, and I think probably a lot of people own a copy of this from what I can tell. It's Velocidrone. I thought it was the oldest of the bunch, but after Frank suggested I try FPV Freerider, I'm no longer sure.
Is it on Steam, Velocidrone?
Velocidrone has its own store, and that's kind of a negative. It uses its own downloader, and its own downloader is kind of janky. I had to install older security libraries on my Linux system for it to work. I had to install an old version of TLS because they haven't properly included the libraries. It takes an absolute age to download. The base game is 17 quid, and there's a bunch of DLC between 4 and 8 quid for this. There's a lot of tracks, but there's no real curation. So you've got millions of tracks with just minor variations, and you can't really tell which are good and which aren't. The graphics I would describe as janky. They're well behind most other things. And the quad selection, I'd say 5 out of 10. There was lots of quads, but I didn't really feel there was a difference in performance between a lot of the quads. I gather additional quads are available in a paid-for DLC, but you're paying 17 quid for the game to start with, and I didn't really feel like going for the DLC. I think the graphics I said would be a 2 out of 10 here. It really took me back to 2002, when things were transitioning from Half-Life to Half-Life 2, kind of, think Quake 3 Arena, that sort of really, really old graphics. Lots of terrain pop-up and flashing on the highest settings. Shadows look terrible. HDR claims to be there, but it's sort of half-implemented HDR. The resolution would reset to 640, 480 every time I started it under Linux. The load times are really long, and my notes here, I cannot emphasize how shit this looks compared to everything else. It was the worst looking by a long way.
How did you find? Because one of the things I always thought about Velocidrone, it's not particularly pretty. He says with clearly the worst looking quad sim ever, but the physics and the feel of the quad to me always felt pretty good. Did you find that, or did
I was frustrated by the size of the environment, and yeah, it was way behind DRL, notably. Just the performance and the maps were quite small. I didn't enjoy it, and when I crashed, it would auto restart me and things like this, where I couldn't just like flip over and carry on. Yeah, I just bounced off this one. I bought it on recommendation and spent 10 or so hours trying to get into it. I just couldn't. I found the controller support was a bit off as well. I couldn't get it to detect any switches or buttons on my controller. And just things like the curation of tracks. You've got like Empty Scene Day. Great. Empty Scene Day, everyone's favorite. Like where are the popular tracks? Where's like a curated track?
Any views or opinions expressed on this show are personal and do not reflect the
Yeah, I know it's super popular. I think it's because people have been playing it for donkey's years, right? So
time immemorial.
Yeah, and that's what's got it has got. I said it was 10 out of 10 for the community because I know there's a huge number of people that play it. So I'm sure if your mates are on this and you've got older laptops and you just want something to kick off a game, it's great. I found it challenging compared to the others, and that might be because the others have got a bit more advertising behind them. One of the things about DRL, it did have some annoying like insurance company sponsorship messages, and there's none of that here. So yeah, I mean, I think what really got me about Curry Kitten Sim was like he's only been working on that for a little while, and it already looks just about as good as Velocidrone does, and the controller mapping worked, I think, a bit better than Velocidrone's, and I just don't know like how it's so bad when it's been in development for so long. It just felt, spending the money on this, it just felt kind of insulting that it was as bad as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And Curry's is literally 10% of the cost of this, so I'd say go buy Curry's.
Or you could get the free version, which is infinitely cheaper.
Oh, there you are, infinitely cheaper. And then we've got Liftoff as well, which people also slag off. I spent a bit more time on Liftoff. I found it easier to get into, but it's also fairly old. I think second oldest here. It's also quite expensive. It's about the same cost as Velocidrone, but it's on Steam, and so it does have occasional sales. Liftoff. The graphics, I'd say, are middling. They're not quite down there with Velocidrone, but they're certainly not up there with DRL and the newer stuff. There's some fancy light effects and things, but they put all this with the camera filters on. When you actually hold on to the shots for a minute, you realize it's pretty basic. The quad selection, I think, is 9 out of 10 because they really benefit from the Steam workshops. They've got community submitted quads, and that gives them a huge variety of different quads that you can fly. Together with reviews and comments about them, which I found difficult about Velocidrone, that the maps and quads and things, there wasn't a lot of information, whereas Steam's workshop system lets you actually have a little bit of reporting on which is what and kind of how they behave. The graphics, I think, 6 out of 10. It's an older engine. It shows its age in areas like foliage. Performance is fairly strong. They've been careful and not cluttered up the maps with tons of stuff, so the performance level stays pretty high. But the maps are not as detailed as they are in some other sims in order to maintain that performance level. There is a DLC for this, I should mention, that adds a bunch of night modes, which is perhaps unique. Don't see that with a lot of the others. So you get all of these maps rendered at night with fancy lighting, which could be nice. Controller support. Sorry.
I was just going to say, there's a quick comment from Caroline there. You mentioned like old PCs are pretty good for Velocidrone. She says my PC is barely able to play Velocidrone. I did notice, and this is not to slag off sims that aren't mine. I do notice that some sims, especially Velocidrone, are quite bloated in terms of how long it will take an older system to boot the game up. And then when you say, I want to play this map, wait several minutes, and then it will go. And that's only a problem if you say, actually, my friends are all playing another map, I want to change, and then you have to wait like another few minutes to change, which is a bit of a shame.
I think Velocidrone wanted, it only took 17 gigs of disk space, but during the install it wanted something like 45 gigs to do the install, and I just didn't really understand what was going on there. It took a very long time to install. And I've got quite a modern PC here with like NVMe storage that can run at a couple of gigs a second, but it still spent like 20 minutes after it downloaded the stuff just decompressing things. And I know like I could have compressed and decompressed that data about 50 times over in the amount of time their installer took. So I think that there's some inefficiencies there.
They got to remember their audience, that we spend all our money on drones and crashing rather than PCs.
But liftoff as well, I think you can have a fast preset with liftoff that does pretty well. And the controller support
community maps.
Yeah, the community maps are nice. I think if you put your stuff on Steam, you get a bit of a jump start in terms of doing multiplayer and community support and allowing people to edit stuff and submit their own content. Steam gives you a lot of that stuff for free. And with Velocidrone, they've tried to do it, but they've clearly had to put a lot more work into it to get that off the ground. I think the tracks... So controller support, I said 9 out of 10 because it just seemed to work. I don't know what they've done with their secret source controller mapping, but it worked really well. Buttons and everything. My only complaint is I can't remap the controller without quitting a map, which is annoying when you're trying to dial everything in the first time because you find yourself loading and quitting maps a bajillion times to get everything working. Tracks, I'd say 7 out of 10. There's not a huge number of base maps, but the maps are huge. Well, not as huge as DRL, but they're pretty large and they're well designed. There's a lot of community maps, and some of those are quite creative. You get a lot of variety from indoors to cities to construction sites, woods, and they've got a very nice map of a big Russian radar array. I think it's called the Russian woodpecker. Which is
Duggar 1.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that there's some quite unique maps in there. It's fun. Interface was also a strength of it. It was nice and clear, not too much faffing around. Community, I'd say, it's not as popular as others. People like to dig on liftoff and call it names for whatever reason. Probably because I think it's always traditionally vying for popularity with Velocidrone, and Velocidrone just seems to get the pro racer element, whereas liftoff's a bit more of a noob thing, I guess.
There is some sponsorship here which kind of falls into it, because Liftoff is, I think, sponsored by Emotion RC, and maybe amongst them, and Velocidrone is TBS, so it's kind of like Commodore 64 versus Spectrum,
right?
Fighting against each other.
We're on to the big guns now. Curry Kitten Sim. We flip over to the Steam page for that bad boy. I felt like, should I put ratings on this? But I'm gonna.
Don't feel you have to be nice to me. You can be quite nasty if you want to be.
So, I think that the key thing to mention here is if you're prepared to do the legwork, this is available for free on GitHub, or a small donation. It really is a small donation there. I think it's £1.69 on Steam. I'd say just buy it. Bung curry a couple of quid. I mean, it's one person's work, and he's clearly put a bunch of time into it. £1.70 is it's not even a half pint, is it? Let's be honest. It also runs Windows, Mac, and Linux, which I think is kind of the odd one out here. Like, I've managed to goose most of this stuff and make it work under Linux, but that's just because like I'm a big nerd and I run Linux all the time as my day job. This one has native Mac support, so useful for a lot of people. Not sponsored.
Yeah, fake news, Curry Kitten. Fake news.
It does come up with a massive TBS logo when you load it. So is that copyright infringement then?
And it has the TBS quads available in it.
Yeah.
And if you go to Liftoff, it has all the Emotion RC quads available. So that was my thinking behind that.
Don't listen to us. We are idiots.
So, well, I do wonder why they've got a massive Team Black Sheep logo, because that comes up every time it loads, and I've noticed it a lot. So I'll hand over to Curry fairly soon on this one. I'll just run through some of the tidbits I've got. But I think, yeah, one man versus pro game studio. He's done pretty well. Like, this is kind of unique, some unique aspects in the video that we're looking at now. Like, we were just following some cars, and now we're following some planes. It's got a line of sight mode, which I think is in one or two of the others, but not very common. The quad selection, I think it's unique in that you have planes and cars. Like, that's what really makes this one stand out. It would be nice to see some presets. I put as, like, you know, to tweak the quad a bit, to go from down to a Whoop up to an X class and stuff. But, you know, it's just one guy. So I was really impressed by the graphics. I mean, you're skimming around an environment here. It's got 3D terrain, mountains, and it's got shadows and stuff that just look a lot better than some of the others here. And I think he's done a pretty good job with Unity here, which is nice. It's got a pretty big map as well. A lot of them shy away from putting too much stuff onto one map, I guess because of PC constraints back in the day. I think Curry's probably done a lot more testing on low-end systems, and I just have this stupid workstation I run on here. I think this in particular makes Velocidone's graphics inexcusable. It was this thing, like, he's done this. It's not like some big project. He's probably put a lot of time into it, but he's not put the amount of time that Velocidrone has into it, and it just looks wonderful. Very excited to see what comes next. I saw Curry put out a YouTube video, and I think it calls out some of the engines, the older engines of other games that are hampering them a bit, and seeing some of what Curry's showing with newer engines. It's interesting to see what he might do. Curry, over to you.
Yeah, the idea behind my sim was, I suppose, different from other sims in that I'm not that into racing, and most of the other sims are more geared towards racing. You can obviously freestyle in them, but I'm not that interested in gates. So I wanted to put up things that we like to do, like we like to follow each other if we're flying planes, or, you know, if there's drift cars available, or there's a bando. And so I just like the idea of a big map with stuff in it. And that you can fly around to and stuff like that. That was the general gist of it. And yeah, the reason it runs on low-end systems is it was written on a 2009 Mac. But as I did mention in the video about the amount of things written in Unity. This is written using Unity, Liftoff's using Unity, Velocidrone's using Unity. Unity is very easy to do cross-platform stuff, so it constantly surprises me that people just won't put out a Windows and a Mac and a Linux version, because it's pretty to do. I mean, I had to make some changes to do iOS and Android versions, but they're not that hard. So putting out desktop versions, everything's very easy. So I'm quite surprised that other sims have such a hassle or don't want to do that.
We should call out your controller support as well. I think that's one of the strongest of the bunch. Like, a lot of them try and make the controller support look really technical, but you've just really kept it simple. There's not a lot on screen. It's got a nice visualization of the actual radio, and it was a real doddle to set up. So I think that's worth mentioning.
Well, what
Even
I found is
managed it.
Hold on, Tony. What I found is all radios, no matter who they come from, can have, and you know, you might say, okay, well, I've got like throttle on channel 3, but it doesn't mean it's going to appear as this axis in the same place, which surprised the hell out of me. I've literally, every single person that plugs in a new radio is telling me, it's like, well, why is this on axis 18? I'm like, I don't know, that's just the way it maps. But if you just say that's throttle, then that should work. It's a bit weird.
One of the things I noticed off of FPV FreeRider, it was the only one out of the bunch that simply said, move your throttle up, now move your yaw left, now move your pitch left, now move roll up. And then it just picked out those axes. And for whatever reason, a lot of the others leave it up to the user to kind of look at all 32 axes and wiggle sticks. I wonder why they kind of don't do more of a straightforward matching.
I do have controller remapping. which asks you to do that. The only problem is with controller remapping when it says move your throttle stick forwards, is that if the system doesn't have it calibrated, so if the system thinks you're only moving your stick this much instead of this much, then it won't pick it up because it's looking for a certain amount of pitch. So that's the easy way to do it. But occasionally, if you plug the wrong stick in, especially these...
Right.
Do you remember the USB dongles that plugged into the trainer ports? They were particularly bad at being calibrated. So you'd move the stick all the way and then you get like 10% movement. So you'd have to do
one axis would be calibrated with more movement than the other. So you'd move your throttle, but also bump and I think you were on the yaw axis.
People would constantly write to me and said, "Oh, I can't get throttle to be recognised," and this is because I found out it's like someone actually sent me his dongle because I was like, "This is so weird. What is it?" And I had to change the code because of it. It's because you move the stick all the way and it goes like this. So we have to recalibrate before doing the remapping. So in some circumstances it won't work unless you've done a calibration first.
Awesome. Okay, I said there's only one track, but it's clearly work in progress, so no judging on that. I like the interface and menus, man. Like, you've kept it simple, and I think that counts for a lot. Some of the others are kind of drowned in neon color schemes, and you can't really figure out what's going on. There's almost too much on screen. I think less is more when it comes to interface and setup. That's quite nice.
I still argue the building site is a bit too tight, and I miss that the wind turbines wandering off.
They don't do that anymore. I fixed it.
Yeah.
There is
a
building site, and I
the
couldn't
wind turbines now have a script to say, "Has your turbine moved? Move back." We don't know what happened, but me, Jack, I don't know if were you there, Tony, and certainly Frank were all playing online and chasing around.
I think it was Frank.
And it is like after an hour, one of the turbine blades had moved about 20 feet away from the turbine.
Just the blades, not the actual turbine.
Just the blade. It was still rotating.
Just a naughty bit of rounding error had crept in and accumulated over time.
Essentially, that's it. Yeah, I think it's
Ghosts
possible
in the machine
to move because we were crashing into it, and I think even though the mass of these is huge, and I actually said you are constrained from movement, the fact that what happens is when a collider moves against another collider, something will move no matter what, and so over time this was going out. So there's now a script that says rotate the blade and also move it back if it moves, which is weird.
Reattach blade, rotate, reattach, rotate, reattach.
all these little tiny things.
Can you animate a little bloke who goes up there on a ladder and just kind of...
Yeah, it's a very weird thing.
Anyway, I like all the plane chasing, car chasing business, and I think that the low cost of entry for this one just makes it like, gotta go get it. Uncrashed would be the next on the list, and this is the one that really... That's on Steam, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Uncrashed. So this is what kicked off my interest in this. I saw this and I was like, oh, Sims. It seems to be one guy's like passion project. There's quite a few interesting levels here. There's the beautifully designed levels. You can tell he's not using the same gubbins as the rest of them. Look at the lighting and the shadows on this one. The one thing that sticks out immediately is, wow, this looks nice. Like the lighting is soft, the shadows look a lot more realistic, and some of these Bando levels are just kind of a pleasure to fly around. They really are a joy. And I think this is like what Curry was saying about before. This is an Unreal Engine 4 game. And he may just have done a couple of stock asset dumps here. We're not sure. But it's really enabled someone to get a bit of a jump on the graphical quality of the others. So it looks visually stunning. There's a lot of incidental detail that you wouldn't notice until you go back to other games and think, why are the buildings just plain boxes? Like there'll be, kind of mops and things standing up in the buildings and bits of rope and wire and plants at odd angles, just as though they were left there. And it really helps, I think, conjure a lot of realism in the maps. The quad selection, 4 out of 10. There's a quad, but you can change a lot of the variables by sliders. So you can say how big the props are, how much it weighs, how much air resistance, and so on and so forth. And that gets you most of the way. It's not perfect. I'd like to see a few presets that jump you around that, and have your 7-inch and your 5-inch and your little whoop presets and things. That would, I think, help a lot. But I was able to get a nice feel. The graphics, I think, are a 10 out of 10, especially that Sky City. You've got this kind of reminds me of what was that?
Multipass.
Multipass, yeah. Oh God, I've completely blanked on it now. The Fifth Element. The Fifth Element reminds me a lot of that. And yeah, exactly. The incredible jumpsuit lady and Bruce Willis being gormless and smoking cigarettes that are 90% filter. Yeah, and it was really fun flying around that. It's just nice to be flying around an environment where other stuff's moving. Like a lot of these sims, the cars are stationary, the scenery doesn't move, but flying around the flying city especially, like you don't just have to remember the course, you have to time it and dodge around cars that are moving. And I thought that was just outstanding, and it's a lot of fun. Controller support, 5 out of 10. It was basic, but it worked. It was able to detect some buttons and switches, but a little bit finicky. The tracks, 6 out of 10, very small in number, but since I bought it, they added 2 extra tracks, it's nice. It shows the guys really putting a bunch of effort into this. That futuristic city track is just outstanding as well. And the bandos are really realistic and nice. Interface and menus are quite good. It's simple, it does what it needs to, and he's clearly put the work in where it counts on screen and getting it to handle nicely. Community is pretty low, though. I'm not sure anyone's really playing this online. If you're looking for multiplayer, it might not be what you want. But for freestyle and a bit of practice, it's pretty good. Now, the last one, FPV Freerider Recharged. This is the newer version of FPV Freerider. And new because it was released in 2018. On Steam again, yeah. So you've got FPV Freerider, and I've gone for the recharged version, a couple of years newer, and we're now moving into that dizzying era of 4S batteries and props that only exploded sometimes. And this is a simulator born of that era. And you can kind of feel it because everything's a little bit sort of slow, and the flight controller makes me think like I'm kindly requesting a butler to go and do something rather than like, snapping and it happening. But it's fun. It's a nice little project. It's maybe not great value these days, considering this now costs more than DRL, which offers 1,000 times more content for a couple of quid less. I'm not sure it's a great value proposition. This is now £8.50 at the moment, and there's a DLC as well that adds a couple of extra tracks for another £2.20 on top.
49.
Oh, sorry,
£8.49.
£8.49. Save that penny. The maps are really small. Like if you punch up, you'll just get a lot of distance fogging and then realize it's about 300 meters across. It reminds me a lot of Gears of War. I was getting serious Gears of War flashbacks off the early Gears of War games here. Like everything is very brown, and there's a couple of lighting effects like God rays that the developers were clearly very happy about and used extensively. So it kind of dates the game quite heavily. Quad selection, 3 out of 10. You're talking sliders, but less sliderific than Uncrashed. You can't do a lot with it. And they all kind of felt the same, like a bit wonky and not that powerful and not responsive. Graphics, I mean, 4 out of 10, I'd say. There's a couple of buildings. There's a building you can fly around and a car park. And each map has just like one building that you're locked in or nearby. Not really compelling. Very brown. Took me back to Quake 2 and Gears of War and things.
I think the original was possibly the very first sim out there. And if you think the maps are small on Recharged, the original maps were like zoom. If anybody,
should we take a look quickly?
Yeah, have a look. Remembers playing it and playing like the playground. It's like a swing. Go past the swing and that's it. You're out of the map. It's like go back.
Well, that'll be realistic because that was about the range you get off your radio, right?
Oh, that's true.
The original FPV experience.
Look at
this. So this map I thought looked amazing. Like, in the desert with a Land Rover, and go about like 20 feet away, and I've hit the edge of the map. It's cute. It's not badly made. It's just it's dated. That's all it is. It's just dated. Wow. Yeah, I can see how they took these and developed them for recharged, because they're clearly the same set of maps but with less polish.
It's probably taught more people how to fly acro than you care to admit. So, it served its purpose. And the standalone version literally runs on a potato. So.
Yeah, and it's on itch.io as well, so it's a good platform for actually giving the developer all the money, and Steam doesn't get a cut should you want to do that as well. So yeah, that's the little rundown. Short version, I'd say, if you haven't checked out anything, go grab a copy of DRL, and it seems to be on sale for £3.60 every now and then. Definitely worth the punt. If you've already got a lot of these, have a look at Uncrashed. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I will have to. I've had some corrections. Velocidrone has 30 different quads, and I was playing out of date video footage of their starter. So apparently it looks a lot better than it than I showed. Hopefully, all right. Hopefully it will work.
Your definition of better may be different from mine, but I've tried to play it a bunch for this. And,
also, hint, at any time on your Steam storefront, you can change the video. So if it looks significantly better, then they should make a new video and put it there instead.
They're not. Well, they're not on Steam.
They're on Steam.
They're on there.
They're running their own bloody website. They can do what they want with it.
Yeah, they don't want. They don't want the Steam stuff. In which case, put videos up there.
Yeah, I've got. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't find. Here we go. This is video on there.
So Ali B in the chat says I had an old Velocidrone build. Well, this is Frank telling me this. I installed it last week using their downloader from their website. So if I've got an old build, it's their fault, not mine. I didn't go and download an old build. I installed it last week.
Not playing this. So I played their tutorial stuff on YouTube.
All right,
this
but
is
yeah,
what it looks like now, I believe.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of water effects and some trees.
Some green stuff, some blue stuff. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, kudos for them for continuing the project and things. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I've enjoyed playing it. When they've the UK drone show and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're with a bunch of mates, you could be playing anything, right? It's the fact that you're all in there having a race and it's a laugh, isn't it? So a lot of it does come down to community.
I remember very clearly the Andy RC experience we had, where he got upset with you for posting that. Where Andy said, "I think this is how you do a trippy spin," and smashed his quad into the ground. And then Jack sent a clip of it to Rate a Riot. Which got him in trouble from Andy.
Andy hates me.
That's why he left.
Andy absolutely hates me. I'm sorry, Andy. I still love you. Oh well. Well, that's all we got time for tonight. Stephen, thank you so much for doing that and giving us the insight and generating content. Literally the glue that's holding this ship together. Everyone's favourite curry kitten.
Goodbye.
Everyone's favourite sim review, Stephen.
Bye.
My darling wife.
Bonjour.
And I've been Bright Until I Fly. Thank you guys. You've been listening to Let's Drone Out. Massive shout out to our patrons who keep this show up and running and keep going. We couldn't do it without you guys. Seriously, big love. And hopefully we'll be doing some bonus podcasts and doing all the Christmas bonus podcasts and all that sort of stuff for you guys, because you guys rule. And thank you for everyone who remembered that the clocks have gone back. I don't know whether you guys alerted anyone. So if you tried to tune in at the regular time this week and was like, where are these idiots? We've had daylight savings and we've gone back an hour. So it's 8 p.m. is it a minus
8 p.m. over here, same as it always
Yeah.
is.
UK time?
You're looking at the wrong clock, guys.
GMT.
Correct British
No,
clock.
GMT. No longer BST. Thank
We
you,
will be
guys.
in sync with our partners over the pond in the US of A next week. Everything snaps back in. So
No
don't
worries.
worry.
All right. Thank you, guys, and good night.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.